welcome to Nelson All Over Cards. My name is Nelson, and today we're taking a look at building some decks for the Big Thwarter archetype. Now, I talked about the Big Thwarter archetype in theory in the Justice archetype video, which is going to be right about here, or you can find that link down below. And I talked about 3 different heroes that can lean really well into that archetype. And today we're going to go from theory into practice and talk about the specific deck builds that you can use in order to make sure all the threat is cleared up on the table. Now, like I said in that video, this Big Thwarter archetype is all pretty much in multiplayer. This is probably going to be overkill for threat mitigation in a solo play. So these builds are targeting more like 3 to 4 player games. With that being said, let's get to the table. Captain America, I think, is one of the more fun heroes to build for the Big Thwarter archetype because he doesn't necessarily need to rely on like these huge big events to take care of the threat. What he does have is his I can do this all day ability, allowing Cap to ready. So with this 2/2/2 stat line, you can thwart for 2, discard a card, stand up, and thwart for 2 more for 4 threat. And we're going to be playing around this idea. We can combine that with a heroic intuition, raising that up to a 3/3, and then Cap's cards with fearless determination takes that to a 4/4. So now, not only is it a lot of threat, it's also flexible. You can hit a side scheme, then the main scheme, or you can do all on one scheme just to clear it out. But that's not where this fun stops. We also have making an entrance. So if we need to, we can thwart for 6/4 with making an entrance. And if we remove the last threat from a side scheme, then we get to heal 2 damage. Now, this is going to be important because we can flex into where we use this. So you can use this to thwart 6 off of maybe a crisis side scheme, or you can thwart 4 and then thwart 6 in order to make sure that you hit that trigger. And because he has this incredible ability to thwart and we want to be removing that last scheme, we're going to combo that with a Justice Serve. Justice Serve says that after you thwart and remove the last threat from a scheme, you get to ready up. So that means that you can thwart if you have Fearless Determination, because this lasts for the entire game. Heroic Intuition. Fearless Determination is until the end of the phase. So you can thwart for 4, stand up, thwart for 4. If that removes the last, stand up and thwart for 4 again. So there's just a lot of flexibility in this build to allow you to remove like specific instances of threat. But that's not where it stops. Because we always want to be removing the last bit of threat from a scheme, we can use cards like Beat Cop in order to make sure that that's happening. Beat Cop you can exhaust to remove a threat from a scheme. So now if you're sitting at, let's say, 7 threat. With Heroic Intuition and Captain America's, you know you can search for 3 and 3, so that would be 6. If you beat Cop first, you can go 3/3 and then trigger Justice Served, allowing you to ready up. Not only that, but also in multiplayer, you have to be a team player at some point during the game, and beat Cop allows you to do that, allowing you to instead of removing threat, deal damage to a minion equal to the amount of threat beat Cop has removed. So there towards the late game, after beat Cop has put in a lot of work, you can snipe a minion for 10 damage, and that's pretty epic. That's pretty fun to do. To round out some of his thwarting, we've got 2 copies of 4 Justice to remove 4 threat from a scheme. And then one of the key parts here, because you need to be removing threat for the entire table, is Overwatch. Overwatch is an incredibly powerful card. It says that you attach Overwatch to a scheme. After you thwart and remove threat from that scheme, you can discard Overwatch to remove an equal amount of threat from a different scheme. Because this is not a forced response, you can choose when to do that. So you can thwart for 6 with the Cap, Heroic Intuition up to 3, Fearless Determination up to 4, and then a Making an Entrance up to 6, and then trigger Overwatch to remove 6 threat from a different scheme. So this also just allows flexibility. And then talking about 0 cost upgrades, we've got 3 copies of Skilled Investigator. Because this is for a higher player count game, you can play this under any player's control, meaning that whenever you are doing all your shenanigans and your threat mitigation and all of that good stuff, whenever you kill a side scheme, everyone gets to draw a card. I would probably target myself first for this, but if I'm playing with a teammate that has a hand size of 4, like a Hulk or a Drax or like a Colossus or something like that, I would probably give them the Skilled Investigator first because it is a higher percentage increase, and so that they can get their engine revving even sooner. Let's talk about allies real quick. We've got Spider-Man. Because this is a higher player count game, Spider-Man's ability to remove 3 threat per player gets really significant. Plus, Cap's economy is well into the range of being able to afford Spider-Man with his super soldier serums, as well as the resource generators that we're going to add, which is Quinn Carrier and Avengers Mansion. So Spider-Man will be able to get onto the table, and he's not even a weak ally once we get him there, right? He's going to remove in a 4-player game 12 threat from a side scheme, and then he can thwart for 8 over the next 4 rounds. We've got Nick Fury. 99.9% of the time with Nick in this deck, we're drawing cards because we want to be drawing into these other pieces. We've got Spider-Man leading into our let's be a team player strategy a little bit. Spider-Man can come in and remove 3 threats, or if needed, you can give him +2 attack and he can start attacking. And then the final ally in this deck is Agent 13, which is Cap's signature ally coming in, removing 2 threat, and then can thwart 2 a lot. The last little bit of the puzzle, let's see where I got room. We got Endurance here, giving Cap that +3 hit points. That means that we don't have to recover using his basic activation with making an entrance in Endurance. Ideally, we're using our basic activation to trigger off of this really significant 3 thwarts. And then we've got our resources, 2 Power of Justices, and our doubles. And that's going to round out Cap's Big Thwarter archetype. Let me know what you think about this deck in the comments. You can comment on all of the decks in the comments, but I do want to hear about this one, what tweaks you would make. If you're playing with 2 players, I probably wouldn't run 3 skilled investigators, stuff like that. So talk to me about this deck. What do you think? And also, if you've played it, let me know how it goes. Let's talk about Groot. Groot, I think, is a little bit more fun to deck build. Let's go down to the table, mainly because he only has a 1 thwart. So the 1 thwart can kind of be a little counterintuitive of how he can be a big thwarter, but he can rely on his events and a couple other tricks up his sleeves in order to maximize his thwarting potential. So let's talk about some of the commonalities between the 2 decks that I just talked about with Cap. We are going to be running a Heroic Intuition. Now, it's not as big of a bang for your buck with Cap with that ready, but when we combo it with a Lashing Vines allowing us to ready, we have a little bit of the same synergy where we can thwart for 4, and then we have the Entangling Vines in Groot's kit to add +2 to a thwarting basic activation. So there is a little bit of synergy there, but that's not the main reason Heroic Intuition is in this deck. And that's what I want to talk about, that this deck is best played alongside an Avenger. The reason being is this card right here, Problem Solvers. So this is an alliance card, meaning that you can pay the cost with anybody at the table. Remember, this is a 3 to 4 player game. You have probably the economy in your deck to pay for this by itself, but if you can get somebody to help out, this is going to be a big help. Problem Solver says that you exhaust a Avenger and a Guardian character, and you get to remove threat from every scheme on the table equal to the combined thwart value of those 2 characters. This is going to be best if you're running with a teammate that is running an Avenger, and we're going to be running a second copy of Heroic Intuition so that you can play that copy on them as well, so that we're getting even more value out of this Problem Solvers. But if you're not running with another Avenger at the table, or maybe they've already used a basic activation, we are going to be running with a Spider-Man. Same thing, remove a lot of threat from a side scheme, but also Spider-Man can sit out there. And what I would do when I'm playing this deck is bring Spider-Man in and hold on to him and not necessarily have him chump or get discarded until you can play Problem Solvers, or you're about to shuffle your discard pile so you can get back and you can trigger that when entering play ability again. Since Problem Solvers is from every scheme on the table, this is going to be great for some of those higher threat situations like a Red Skull where there's going to be a ton of side schemes, a Venom Goblin. There's actually a video that I'm going to put right about here. Actually, no, it's it's going to be over in the other corner where Jason D20 Woodworking played this type of deck against Venom Goblin, an expert Venom Goblin, and it went really well with the Problem Solvers. It works because it takes care of everything on the table. And also this does combo with an Overwatch, and so now we're just removing multiple instances of threat. If you do Groot plus a Heroic Intuition, Problem Solvers to remove 4 threat from every scheme on the table, you have an Overwatch out there. You can trigger that again for 4 threat off of a different scheme. There's just a lot of combos that can go in here, and you can really start to maximize that threat mitigation. But just because there's only 3 of these means that we want to be trying to combo an Overwatch whenever we can, or whenever we can maximize it. And we have a couple more options for that. We've got I Am Groot from his kit. So we can remove threat from a scheme equal to the number of growth counters on Groot. Groot can have up to a maximum of 10 growth counters, which prevent damage, but also a lot of his cards combo off those growth counters. Lashing and Entangling Vines require you to spin those growth counters, so we want to be protecting those at all cost. And so we're going to be running a couple cheap allies as well. We're going to be running Ironheart to come out, draw us a card, mainly be a chump blocker. Eros is kind of the same thing. Eros also has a fairly good thwart stat at 2 for 2. And then he can come out thwart and block. And then we will also be running a Gamora. Now, Gamora is not going to be blocking as much for us, but she can help us draw into the problem solvers. So that problem solvers, Iron Group, and the Crisis Averted that are going to help us remove just so much threat. Because we're playing a team game and we're removing all the threat on the table, same thing that Cap did, we're going to be running the 3 skilled investigators in order to help trigger all the card draw for our teammates as well as ourselves. And then because we are guardians, we're going to be running a think fast. Groot likes to flip down in order to rebuild his growth counters with his ability and his fertile ground support. Think fast allows you to basically trade a growth counter for Confuse. You're able to prevent a lot of threat. Also in a multiplayer game, Confuse is really strong because a lot of people are going to be flipping down. And then we're going to round it all out with our resource generators being a Helicarrier, a Def Focus. We've got the Power of Justice and our doubles. That's going to be Groot's deck. Let's talk about the cartoon web slinger next, Spider-Ham. Spider-Ham is insanely powerful. I'll start out just by saying that. He can be so good and he can flex into so many different roles for a team. And so the big Thwarter archetype is, I think, probably one of his strongest. But let's take a look at what that deck build looks like. So let's go to the top down. Spider-Ham starts with a 2 thwart, a 1/1 stat line, and he says whenever you take any amount of damage, you place a tune counter on Spider-Ham, and that tune counter can be used to be spent as a wild resource. So this means that Ham's economy is going to be very good, and he doesn't mind taking a lot of hits. He's got 12 on his alter ego side. He's got a recovery of 5. If you're playing in a multiplayer setting, especially with a big thwarter, you have no qualms rolling down and healing if you need to. But let's talk about Ham. So he has a 2 thwart, but when we play Organic Webbing, which is an upgrade, he gets +1 thwart, giving him up to a 3, as well as Organic Webbing gets the text saying that you can remove a tune counter and then ready Spider-Ham. So now we kind of got that Captain America synergy going on. And then if we play the Heroic Intuition, that takes us up to a 4. We can thwart for 4, ready, thwart for 4 more. But because Spider-Ham is a web warrior, he has other ways to ready. He has Spider-Man. So Spider-Man Peter Parker says that whenever they make a basic thwart or attack, you get to ready another web warrior card. So now we're looking at another thwart here with Spider-Ham. We've got Spider-Man Auto. Whenever you play Auto, you get to ready another upgrade that can be Organic Webbing. So you can spend another tune counter to thwart again. There's just a lot of ways to ready with Ham, and that is pretty exciting. And then also we've got 2 copies of Justice Served to ready even more. So now if we're removing that last threat, we can utilize Justice Served to ready and thwart even more. So now our potential goes up to like a 4 thwart, and we can ready once with Organic Webbing, so 8. Spider-Man takes us up to 12. Justice Served takes us up to 16. If we have Auto in our hand, we can ready up with Organic Webbing to take us up to a 20 thwart just off of our basic activation. And so Spider-Ham has a lot of flexibility when it comes to thwarting just using his basic power. Let's continue to talk about these web warriors because the entire deck, outside of just basic thwarting, is kind of built around what this web warrior trait can do. We got the Web of Life and Destiny, so we can ignore the card's cost if we control a web warrior, which we do. It's Spider-Ham, we control him. So Web of Life and Destiny is free, and then it's after an web warrior ally lose play, choose a player, and we get to draw a card. We can choose ourselves. However, because we're playing in a multiplayer setting, Spider-Ham's economy is really good. It can be pretty advantageous to target other players that don't necessarily have the economy that you do for that card draw. And then we're going to run just more web warrior allies to trigger Web of Life and Destiny. So we got SPDR. We've got Spider-Man Hobby Brown, so recursion, so we can attack, thwart, and then pull it back and just trigger Web of Life and Destiny forever. Spider-Man deals damage. Ghost Spider gets those awesome events that you are running. Lady Spider removes threat. Spider-Man removes even more threats. So now once you have a couple of these out there, maybe Peter and Ghost Spider, you can play Spider-Man and then remove 4 threat from a scheme whenever he enters play. So a lot of threat mitigation going around here. And then we also have the flexibility that is across the Spider-Verse. So we can exhaust a Web Warrior card, search your discard pile for a Web Warrior ally and put that into play. You can choose another player to repeat that ability for 3 resources. Since you kind of have capitalized a lot of the Web Warrior allies, this may not be the best thing for someone else to be running some of these cards, but if they're running like the protection and all of those Web Warriors, then yeah, this is going to be even better. So if that was not enough thwart, we have other ways to take out threat. So we've got Crisis Averted, we've got the Overwatch synergy, we've got the Skilled Investigator, which we talked about in the last 2 decks, so I'm not going to go into huge detail here. But then we've also got Ham It Up. Ham It Up removes threats equal to the number of tune counters on you, and if I've learned anything playing Spider-Ham, it is not hard to have a lot of tune counters, and so you can just have so many tune counters, and then just a 0-cost card here, which can trigger off the 0-cost card of Overwatch, and so you can get a lot of threats. And then my favorite Justice card for Spider-Ham is Great Responsibility. So whenever any amount of threat would be placed on the main scheme, you can take it as damage instead. So that could be at the beginning of the activation, or at the beginning of the villain turn when you're placing that initial threat, or it could be a scheme, but you take the damage, triggering you getting a tune counter, which can be used as a resource. Incredible card. And then we've got our resource generator of Team Building Exercise, a lot of Web Warriors, and then I think every single one of his cards is a cartoon, so you can use Team Building Exercise with I think every single one of his cards. And then we've got the doubles. We don't have any power ofs just because Ham doesn't really need it, but that is Spider-Ham, the last deck for the big Thwarter archetype. Let me know what you thought about this video. This is kind of a experiment. I don't know if this is going to be something that is super useful. I wanted to try it. I'm also going to be doing them in short form, and so if this is something that you want to see more of, let me know. I would love to do more of these, but if it's also just not something that's super beneficial, I'm not there's no reason. I can focus my time elsewhere. But let me know in the comments what you all thought about this video. Check out the Marvel CDB links. Those are going to be in the description as well, so you can go in and find the decks and find where all the cards come from and all of that good stuff. But I appreciate you watching. Hope you have some fun removing all the threat in the entire world with these big Thwarter decks, and I will see you next time. Peace.